What's up, guys? You are listening to a July 11th edition of the SplashTag Podcast. I'm Matt. Today, I'm joined by my good friend Sid, who actually was the first ever guest on this podcast. But on top of that, he was actually on a couple episodes ago, kind of discussed just debriefing the NBA Finals, talking about what we expected regarding free agency. And I haven't recorded any podcasts since free agency started on June 30th. Today, just to tell a quick story, like heading into today, the last big domino of the offseason to fall after all this movement and all these transactions was just where's Russell Westbrook going to go? And I was in the office. I'm working on West Coast time, so Pacific time. And it's getting kind of late. I'm thinking like, yo, do I stick around in the office, try to wrap up a couple more errands, or should I maybe head out, get dinner? Maybe I should go watch Toy Story 4. Maybe I should go record a podcast with Sid. And this was all before I saw the news. And then I checked my phone and I saw Russell Westbrook has been traded to the Houston Rockets. And I immediately hit up Sid and I was like, yo, Russ, we podding. We doing a pod, no question. So without further ado, how's it going, Sid?
It's going pretty well, man. Good to be back, and yeah, very exciting. It was a slow day, but definitely the Russell Westbrook news it got me more excited about this upcoming NBA season. I'm already excited, but this just adds to the juice.
Yeah, I'm sure I echo that, and I'm sure anybody who remotely likes the NBA, except for maybe Chris Paul fans, will or kind of feel the same way. But so without we're just gonna get right into it. Like, I'm not gonna lie, dude, I'm still processing the trade. Like, normally I try to I think you and I, we both like to, be pretty objective and not lean too extreme with regards to an opinion. So yeah. I'm kind of hearing both sides of like why the trade is good for one side and why it might not be good for this, why it's bad for the same team and whatnot. And so I'm really still just kind of thinking and processing. I was wondering, we're 2 hours removed from the trade happening or being Woj bombed. What is your kind of impression at the moment of just the implications of this trade?
Well, seems like the Rockets, they wanted to pair up these two guys, Westbrook and Harden, and they individually these two wanted to play together again. So it's definitely good to see them sort of reunite. As far as the team situations, the Rockets clearly wanted to change up the look of their team, and after this past disappointing results of this past season, losing to the Warriors again in the second round, they definitely wanted to explore all options, and seems like they felt that Russell Westbrook, being younger and recently an MVP, although Rockets fans weren't very happy about that, but I'm sure they'll still very much welcome him, and it's definitely an interesting duo now that they have, and for the Thunder, I mean, it's really just the end of an era. They're definitely trying to get ahead as far as planning their future and moving on from this, KD, Russ, and obviously Harden was there a while back, and they're just completely transitioning from that era and starting all over. They have a lot of draft picks. I think, what is it, like 10 or 15 first round draft picks in 5 years?
Yeah, I think they have 15 for the next 7 drafts.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. So they're certainly, they have the resources to try to rebuild. So it's just a matter of direction. I mean, this could definitely be a trade that works out for both sides. But yeah, we'll just have to see. But definitely excited for what's at stake.
Yeah, I guess to piggyback off of that a little bit, from OKC's perspective, it made sense, right? Like, his trade value is probably not going to increase,
Yeah.
if you trade him next year or in 2 years or whatever the case may be. And you're probably not winning a title once. I mean, I didn't think they were winning a title with Paul George. And then once you ship Paul George out, it's clearly a new chapter, like you said, like they're planning for their future. So I think from that perspective, when you look at what OKC got by, getting rid of their 2 All-Stars, they got a fantastic return. I guess I would be curious to see like what were the other offers for Westbrook out there, but at the same time, I know that his agent was working with the Thunder to make sure that they sent to find a destination that he wanted to go to. So maybe he just didn't want to play in like Detroit or Miami.
Yeah.
Just in Miami, but just as an example. So I wouldn't say. I think it's really hard to say the Thunder are losers here, except for maybe the fact that they've got to find a way to they're either going to pay Chris Paul, and it does even though I think Chris Paul is still a good NBA player, it just doesn't make sense on that money on a team like this. At this point of Chris Paul's career, considering that he hasn't been to the finals yet, he wants to win and he wants to be in contention. So it just doesn't really make sense for Chris Paul to be there. Doesn't really make sense for the Thunder to keep him around. So I guess by taking on that contract, they're just going to have to find a way to reroute Chris Paul and or maybe buy him out. But if you're going to buy him out, you probably don't want to pay him however much he still do. I think it's like 120 million. So those are my thoughts from the Thunder side. As for Houston, I now in a vacuum right now, Russell Westbrook is absolutely a better player than Chris Paul. He's more durable. He's just better at he's basically better at everything than Chris Paul except for shooting, maybe you could argue. Like he's
I would agree.
Yeah, so and that's not a knock on Chris Paul. It's just Chris Paul's different part of his career at this point. But one thing I do wonder is one thing that my mind kind of jumped to when I heard about the trade was that I'm curious to see how D'Antoni chooses to mix it up now that he has Westbrook and Harden, both of who are incredibly ball dominant. And, both, I would say Russ especially, but both are obviously pretty strong personalities and big superstars. And from what my personal opinion is that Mike D'Antoni is a basketball X's and O's. He is a genius. He is one of the best he's one of the best X's and O's guys in modern NBA history. Maybe we could say since turn of the century. But he's always been really poor with managing personalities and just managing people. I think back to his most successful teams being the Suns, where you have Steve Nash, who is not a difficult guy he's not a difficult personality to handle, and Amari, who I think is similar. But you look at, him, Chris Paul, Harden, there was obviously tension there. Kobe, Dwight, I think everyone remembers that. Carmelo, and a little bit of Amari there. So I say all that to say, I do see a scenario in which the Rockets actually are worse as a basketball team, even though their ceiling hypothetically just got better, right? Because you need 2 All-Stars usually to win a championship. So from that sense, sure. I'm kind of rambling a bit here, but I guess I say all that to say, I feel as though their ceiling got higher. Like there's definitely this ceiling where they can be a contender and be better than, say, the Clippers and the Lakers. But I also can really see a scenario where this goes sideways. And in hindsight, a lot of people are going to say, like, wow, why did we think that this was going to work?
Yeah, I that definitely seems like a realistic scenario. I mean, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if this is another one of those teams that has a very good regular season. Maybe they crack the top 4 in the West and expected to make some noise, but given how deep and how insanely good the West is and how many of these great teams you have and that are going to be in the mix, I could see a scenario in which they don't have much playoff success. So that narrative of, these guys can't win, and when the postseason and the games that matter, that might continue. Not that I'm really suggesting that narrative, but I could see that sort of playing, that sort of coming into effect again, just the way it has been. I mean, that's really what D'Antoni's reputation, the biggest knock against him, because like you said, at X's and O's standpoint, he's one of the best, but he hasn't quite had the success in the postseason to sort of validate that.
Yep.
So, yeah, it'll be tough. I mean, theoretically they have a higher ceiling, but just looking at how the picture looks in the West right now, it's really hard to see them going past to the second round.
So you don't see them as a conference finals team at the moment?
Yeah, at the moment, I don't see it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I will say that 2 years ago when they traded for Chris Paul, I was a little skeptical how that he and Harden would fit together, but they certainly, they went and produced, and of course got the number 1 seed, made it to the conference finals, and even last year they had their moments in which they looked like a very good team. They went on a tear, I think, after February. So from that standpoint, I would say, hey, Westbrook and Harden, maybe there's another level that we could see with those two under D'Antoni. But as far as postseason success goes, can they sustain it for a playoff series against, the Lakers, the Clippers, even the Utah Jazz, the Nuggets? Can they sustain that? That's a question mark I have right now. But we'll have to also see how they kind of fill out the rest of their roster.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The thing is, like, because they did a straight up Chris Paul for Westbrook swap, I don't know if they have too much flexibility other than, minimum guys and, maybe a couple, I don't know if they've used their mid-level exception or one of the whatever exception they're eligible for. But I do think before everyone rides writes their various hot takes, I do think it's very important to consider that even as strong of a personality as Russ is, and as stubborn as I think Mike D'Antoni has been in the past regarding his unwillingness to adapt, I do think it's important to consider that Harden, D'Antoni, Westbrook, it's very possible that it's very possible that all three of them are going to be willing to adapt because they realize that what they've been doing so far, as great as they have all been in their own individual respects, that they need to adapt in order to reach that final pinnacle, right? So I don't think it's crazy that, everyone says, oh, well, Russ, we all know the criticisms of Russ. He's not an efficient jump shooter. He forces up a lot of really bad shots that, like, he's Stephen Curry, but he's not a shooter like Stephen Curry. Harden, sometimes he looks disengaged, pounds the hell out of the ball, and then sometimes, looks really uninterested when the ball's not in his hands. D'Antoni, we've heard all these knocks, but I'm not going to write off the possibility that all three of them can learn, adapt, and be on the same page to do whatever it takes regarding whatever they need to sacrifice in order to put themselves in the best position to win a championship. I guess I say all that to say I'm still not really sure where I land on, who did on where the Rockets, on how, I guess, on what the effect on the Rockets is, because, someone actually, our friend Kieran actually put it to me well after the trade happened. He said that he says if it's 2024 and Russ, Harden, and D'Antoni haven't won, anything major, like they haven't been to a finals or whatever the case may be, that they're all going to be glossed over in the basketball history books. So I do think that maybe that's something that a lot of people who are more down on this trade might be sleeping on, is the fact that maybe these guys are willing to adapt. But I do think it'll be very interesting to see. Obviously, Russ has been accustomed to being the guy. Everything is catered towards him. And then same situation with Harden and Houston. So it'll be interesting to see because now I don't think if both of them continue to operate under under the same habits and mindset and style that they've been doing so the last couple of years, I don't think I'm with you. That doesn't get them past the second round.
Right. Yeah, they'll definitely have to adapt. We'll have to see a different version of probably Russell Westbrook because, I mean, they're still essentially James going to run. It's going to center around James Harden, and Westbrook is just going to kind of get himself into that mix. So, but I mean, I think that it's a change of scenery for Westbrook, and I think he'll embrace that opportunity and being able to play with. And these are former teammates, so
yeah,
I'm sure
they're
he'll
also
be happy.
friends. Yeah, they're also friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure like that just the different situation will allow them to adapt, and also understanding what's at stake and what they're up against in that daunting Western Conference.
Yeah. Before we kind of move on, I guess, to other free agency and or offseason moves and the title contenders and the playoff picture, I do want to point out like how crazy is it? In 2012, you have KD leading the league in scoring. Russell Westbrook's he's an all-star, he's an all-NBA guard, and then James Harden, sixth man of the year in Oklahoma City. Serge Ibaka, candidate or I think he led the league in blocks or he was up there. And everyone was like, wow, this OKC team. This is a dynasty that's going to be a force to be reckoned with for the rest of the decade. And then what do you know? They obviously were contenders for many years, even after the Harden trade. But it's like, wow, they only went to one finals when we thought that they were just this inevitable champion.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, yeah, like you said, I think a lot of people predicted a dynasty, and I think a lot of people thought that they would be going to the finals a lot more times and running into probably the Heat or running into LeBron James. We were going to see those battles between the two teams, but never quite happened.
Yeah, and like on top of that, what was I gonna say? It's crazy just to think that OKC ownership told Sam Presti, "Hey, we're not gonna pay the luxury tax," and I don't know if you know this, but I think it was only like a $6 million difference in total, not annually, that made James Harden request a trade.
Oh, so wow.
It was, I think he wanted 4 years, $60 million as his extension. And then they said, no, I think they said we can't go over 4 years, like what, 54, 55, that range. And apparently he wasn't happy about it, or he and his agent weren't happy about that. And then next, what do you know? He's a Rocket, and, and the whole course of NBA history looks totally different.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. I can't believe that they weren't willing to pay him just that relatively smaller additional amount.
Yeah, and there was a miscalculation on, I think, a lot of sides in that at the time, Harden probably never realized he would be what he is now. And right. OKC obviously didn't because they were willing to trade him and whatnot. And like I said, when you think about that contract now, it's like, damn, what if they had extended Harden for 4 years, 60? Like that could have been a little bit like Steph getting that 4 years, 48 extension that allowed Golden State to bring in Iguodala, re-sign Kevin Durant later on and whatnot. So it's just kind of funny in hindsight, like, because James Harden's now got this $220 million extension and all this and whatnot, and it's just funny seeing that. And then you look back at the articles when he was traded from OKC, and it's like, yeah, he asked for $60 million over 4 years and he didn't get it.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
To think, yeah, it would have been a bargain.
Yeah, but I guess the Harden trade is a what if that everybody talks about. So I really don't want to touch. I don't want to re-gloss over that. So I guess moving on. Obviously, there were a lot of major free agency uh, moves. I guess transactions. I guess is the right way to put it. A lot of player movement. I guess
Yeah.
my first question is when and how did you hear about the Kawhi Paul George news? And then B, what do you feel about their standing in the West?
Okay, so yeah, I'm since I'm in the Eastern time, I was actually asleep. I'd gone to bed like 20 minutes before that trade happened, and yeah, so I wasn't quite in the loop in the moment. So I just woke up to the news and I saw a bunch of messages like, "Holy crap, Kawhi!" and uh, then I immediately just checked to see, and I saw the Clippers, and I couldn't believe it. And then I see that the whole Paul George trade that facilitated the transaction happening. And at first I was like, wow, did not see this coming, but this makes a lot of sense as to why we were waiting for longer than we expected, and
Mm-hmm.
there was all that suspense. So it was one of those things where when you hear the whole story, it starts to make more sense. So I'm like, well, oh, okay, of course he wants to play with another superstar, and so if he's going to go to the Clippers, that needed to happen. Um, so and of course I'd heard the reports of how even though like he grew up in LA and he would want to I believe he rooted for the Lakers. I'm not sure if that's 100% true, but I also heard that he just didn't want to form that super team and play with LeBron. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it does make a lot of sense. But I will say that I thought he was going back to Toronto. He's going to run it back, and that situation would be he would conclude that might be the best situation for the short term.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, he clearly he wanted to play in LA, he wanted to take up a new challenge, and so like yeah, they're that was a good move by the Clippers. And as far as they're standing in the West, I'm not gonna go ahead and make go to. I'm not gonna predict exactly their seeding or how far they're gonna go. I will say that I can see them in the conference finals, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to pick them any further than that. Like what will happen in the conference finals or finals that I will save for closer to the beginning of the season.
That's fair. Do you think that the Clippers are now position? Do you think the Clippers are better than the Lakers?
Ooh, I'm inclined to say yes because of the defense. Right now, you look at how they measure up, and um, you know, you have Patrick Beverly, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and that's the way. Defensively, they're looking very sharp. So I would say for now, and it's also we have to see how the Lakers sort of gel all these pieces together that they got.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the Lakers are making some very, very good moves, and it would not surprise me at all if they ended up being the champions this year. But right now, the Clippers, and also, of course, how they just seeing how they surprised people last year without
Mm-hmm.
a superstar, and how they got the eighth seed, and they challenged the Warriors. They won 2 games, and then adding two superstars. That's certainly just I feel like it jumps them up. So I would say they're slightly better, but again, I'll save that pick for closer to the season. Um,
Yeah.
for now, my gut feeling is that they're slightly better.
Yeah. I'm with you. Uh, I just think the Clippers defense is definitely better. When you look, also, I think one thing that shouldn't be slept on is that with the Clippers, they have more guys who have been there and know what their role is. For instance, Patrick Beverley, what he's gonna do next year is exactly what he's done for the Clippers the last 2 years. And same deal with Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell and these guys who have been there, and they do have a sense of familiarity and continuity. Whereas with the Lakers, it's like, sure, Kuzma was there last year, but Kuzma's role is going to be so much different than anything he's been accustomed to. And then you obviously have all these new guys you got to fit in. Kind of like you said, they probably need some time to gel. I expect the Clippers will probably start to finish be a better team. You never know, just because when LeBron tries on defense when it's do or die, and he's going all out, like, you just never know. But I do think that the Clippers are positioned to have a better regular season record than the Lakers for sure. That's just my opinion, but I do think I would feel pretty confident on saying that I do think the Clippers will have a better regular season record. But like you said, there's still subtle moves that can be made. Obviously, you can trade players during the season, so if there's anything we've learned from this offseason, it's that nothing's certain until it actually happens.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you don't know if we're done seeing this crazy moves that's gonna get you off your chair. Who knows, right?
Yeah. I guess leads me to my next question. Obviously, ridiculous amount of movement. We could have 3 hours worth of podcasts. Yeah. We could have like a 3-hour podcast highlighting all the major free agency moves, because so many stars, move teams and whatnot. We're almost 30 minutes in and we haven't even talked about Durant, Kyrie, Kemba. But what I do want to ask is, we've seen all this movement. Who is the next superstar to move? Because I felt like Westbrook was the last domino once it was clear that the Thunder and Westbrook and his agent were working on finding a trade partner. I wonder who is the next superstar that's on the move, because even though it feels like, pretty dormant now that Westbrook it is. I do think it's important to note that. I think it's important to note that, like, all it takes, like, these things happen quickly, a disgruntled superstar, and then all of a sudden they request a trade, So who is there someone that stands out to you as the next big domino to maybe fall?
Honestly, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. If I had, maybe Devin Booker. Obviously the Suns are one of the teams that are not we don't perceive as a contender this year. So yeah. I could see him kind of at some point approaching the front office and trying to get his way out to a better situation. So yeah. that would be my guess. After him, maybe Bradley Beal. I hope it doesn't happen. That's it's our local team, and they just got Isaiah Thomas. I'll be excited to see how that situation plays out, and it would be nice if he could play with Bradley Beal, give him a bit of help. But you've kind of heard Bradley Beal in some rumors the last couple of seasons, so that he could be another guy.
Yeah, I was gonna hit on that. I was gonna bring up Bradley Beal maybe. I think Devin Booker. The problem with Devin Booker is that he has a 5-year extension that starts like this year. So right. I guess in that sense it's an incredibly he's an incredibly valuable asset, because whoever he gets traded to can have him long term. But it also doesn't really put much pressure on the Suns unless he makes things really ugly, which, if you're Devin Booker, why would you do that when they just paid you? You're clearly the guy, and you're incredibly young, and they're trying to build a team around you. So I guess that would be my thought. I've heard rumors, so Bradley Beal would have been my potential answer. Another name that I've heard floating around is that maybe the Warriors will try to parlay D'Angelo Russell into
Oh,
something else
yeah,
because
that's right.
that maybe they don't see him as a long-term fit with Clay and Steph. We'll see. He obviously he hasn't even played a game for them yet, so we will see. But yeah, no, I do think that like right now it seems like the cards are all set. It's like you're playing a card game and the dealer just dealt out all the hands, but you just never know when the next big domino or big Woj bomb when that next Woj bomb is. So that could change. That could have a serious impact on the league. So I guess it's
Yeah,
just interesting. Right now it feels like this is like the post. This is we're all settled, and who knows? Maybe next trade deadline. I don't expect this, but maybe next trade deadline there's going to be a superstar who wants out.
yeah. Like we definitely, there could be a lot more moves that are about to happen, and yeah, of course, during the season until the trade deadline, could always have the mid-season trades. So yeah, it will be
Yeah,
exciting. The NBA landscape has changed, and I think more than ever before, it seems like players seem to have this leverage. So
yeah.
yeah, that can definitely there can be this butterfly effect.
Do you think? Okay, so let's take the Warriors out of it. Hold on, let me rephrase that. Do you think that there's a single big three in the NBA right now? Like, you know how when you and I first in the first couple of years where you and I started, talk, chatting hoops and stuff, it was all about forming the big three, right? It was
Oh yeah,
LeBron, Wade, Bosh.
right.
The Knicks even tried it. The Knicks were trying to do it with Chauncey / Tyson Chandler, Amari, and Melo. The
Hmm.
Lakers had it, but they didn't do it in the traditional super team sense. And then obviously there was Love, Kyrie, LeBron, and then obviously recently we've had Durant on the Warriors. But
Hmm.
now I look at the league and I see a lot of duos, but not a lot of big threes. Do you agree with that, or do you feel like I'm maybe underrating a certain player per se?
Oh no, I actually agree. Honestly, yeah, the as far as the landscape goes, it really does seem like we have a handful of teams with their star duos. And I mean, of course, they can have other like very good players around them, but if we're talking about like superstar caliber players, it seems like it's a lot of them are in pairs now.
Yeah,
So, of course, in Golden State, once Clay is healthy, I would still consider Steph, Clay, Dre,
I mean they also have
somewhat of a
Russell
big three.
now, and they have
Yeah, they have
Russell too.
Russell.
So I mean
Yeah.
Russell is not he's not a top 10 guy, or a top 15 guy, but he was an all star. So um,
Yeah.
granted, it was in the East, and it was obviously a weaker conference, and he was an injury replacement, but still an all-star appearance is an all-star appearance.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
the
he's
Warriors.
also yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, the Warriors are, of course, they're actually seem like they're more just balanced throughout. But of course, like Steph and Clay are their main stars.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. I guess I guess if someone wanted to argue that Philadelphia has like a big three, I wouldn't argue against that necessarily, but I also don't think that's like the traditional or kind of the super team model that you and I kind of are accustomed to per se.
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's if we're talking about Horford, I think he's a very good player, but I
Yeah,
wouldn't necessarily call him that superstar. Same way
along
I
with
look at
Tobias. Along with
yeah, same with
Tobias. He's
Tobias.
yeah.
Yeah, like the same way I look at Draymond Green and D'Angelo Russell is how I would
Yeah,
put
that's
Horford and
fair.
Tobias. Yeah.
That's fair. So, I guess with all that in mind, just kind of now that it seems like a lot of the transactions are kind of set. Um, tell me if you agree with this. Tell me if what you agree with, what you don't agree with. I personally feel as though the West playoff picture, it'll be this. If you take the 8 teams that made it last year, I think you drop OKC, you put in the Lakers, and I'm talking about qualifying. I'm not talking about seeding. I think you
Okay.
drop OKC, you put in the Lakers, and then you drop. Yeah, I'm gonna say it. I hopefully your buddy Gary's not listening to the podcast. Drop San Antonio, put in Sacramento. What do you agree, disagree? Like essentially framing it that way, like taking last year's 8 teams, if who makes it again, and then who gets replaced.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that. Especially not OKC for LA. Yeah, San Antonio for Sacramento. That's gonna be a nail biter for me. I have a hard time counting out the Spurs, and
Yeah,
they're just always, they're still an excellent front office organization. They just know how to make something out of nothing. So I don't know. I can't count them out. But
that's
again,
fair.
Sacramento is, of course, they look promising. So yeah, I haven't quite thought about who I would sub in or take out and put and throw in for as far as like the Western Conference playoff teams.
So you might go with 7, everyone except OKC, and then put in the Lakers.
Yeah, that would be my
Yeah.
gut feeling for now.
Okay. I honestly, I'm probably stupid for counting out, or not even counting out, but betting against the Spurs. But
I mean, no, I don't think it's stupid because like I get it. I mean, you're kind of you believe in Sacramento and I want to as well. It's that would be a
yeah,
great story.
yeah.
But it's
I mean,
kind of hard.
yeah. I mean, you know me. You know I am 110% in on De'Aaron Fox, and he
Yeah.
has done absolutely nothing to make me change my mind on that. So, but it was really tough because the West, as we've touched upon, is an absolute gauntlet, and so I had to take someone out, and like, the San Antonio doesn't have they have an all-star in LaMarcus Aldridge, and then another former, or I guess all-star, we can say, DeMar DeRozan. But those aren't 2 guys who you would put as maybe top 15 guys necessarily. I know Sacramento doesn't have any at the moment, but I do see a lot of growth and youth and promise in Sacramento. But I don't know. I guess. Okay, let's say we fast forward to April and it's like, oh, the Spurs have made the playoffs for the 20 whatever it's straight year, and I'm like, okay, I was stupid to count them out, but I think everyone should know there will be a day where the Spurs don't make the playoffs. So there's no reason. There's some solid. There's good reason for me to maybe bet that year would be this year.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's very true. I mean, streaks are meant to be broken, and eras do end, and obviously the Spurs are very different from what they used to be. But they, of course, they're still very good at sort of building the roster and trying to make things work. But yeah, it's that can only go for so long. So
Yeah.
I
mean,
yeah, I
like,
guess you can say that the chances just increase every year as it keeps going.
yeah. I mean, this might be breaking news to some Patriots fans, but like one day Tom Brady will retire. So I mean, like you said, like all these dynasties, streaks, eras, they're all everything has a beginning and everything has an end. Just a universal truth of life. So that said, nothing but respect. I mean, it would not surprise me in the slightest if the Spurs get into the playoffs and and put up a good fight against whoever they're playing, because heck, they just did it this past year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I know that you tend to lean. I know that you're kind of leaning towards saying like I want to kind of see. I want to get I won't make any like or kind of declarations on who I think will finish in terms of seeding until closer to the regular season. But I guess I think I've told you this privately, but I personally think that Utah. I said this before all the free agency moves, and I'm just gonna stick with it, and I'll explain why in a second. But I think Utah is going to be a top 2 seed in the West, and I honestly am picking them to be the number one seed in the West with like 58, 59 wins. And here's why. Their defense is already elite, and defense is something that is pretty consistent on a night-to-night basis in the regular season. Some nights your shots aren't going to fall, but defense, if you can make the other team work for their buckets, like that's something that's like a lot less. Defense is something that relies less on the flow, like how a player is feeling that day, if that makes sense. So their defense was already elite, and then it only got better by replacing Ricky Rubio with Mike Conley. I also think Mike Conley gives them a major upgrade on the offensive end, someone who can play make and create for others, so that Donovan Mitchell isn't this one-man gunslinger as we saw in the Houston series. And then lastly, they just improved their offensive firepower, and I like their free agency additions of Bogdanovich. And so all that considered, and the fact that I think Quinn Snyder's a good coach, I think all that is a recipe for a good regular season team.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the way the league is sort of constructed now, I mean, most teams are going to score, and like there's going to be a lot of great offensive performances collectively as a team throughout the league. But Utah, given their defensive prowess, that's going to give them an added advantage, and it's going to give them basically a chance against any contender, regardless of how well they're playing or how stacked they are. Utah, like you said, is going to make them work. They're well coached. Those guys have played together for a few years now, and they got good young pieces. And Mike Conley, I think he's going to fit very well into that system. So, I'm thinking Utah is definitely going to be one of the top seeds, and it's going to be extremely challenging to beat them in a best of 7 series. Because even if a team, whoever faces them, they might have 1 or 2 or 3 games in which their shots are falling, but it's only going to get harder as the series goes on. So, yeah, Utah is gonna be right up there with the Clippers and Lakers, I think, in the West.
Yeah. The thing is, like, I feel like the Raptors this past year, they had their whole load management plan with Kawhi, and obviously it worked out because they got a championship, and Kawhi was great, even though he was kind of hobbled during the finals. But I think Jalen Rose on Get Up said it, or Jalen Rose on one of the ESPN programs said it pretty well today. He said once the Spurs won a championship by like resting players during the regular season and kind of treating the regular season like a marathon, not a sprint, and then you pair that with the fact that the Raptors coined this term of load management, or they obviously had this load management plan. Once you do that, you can't really put the toothpaste back in the tube. So the way I see it is like a lot of teams this year, they're going to, obviously there's a lot less room for error when it comes to making the playoffs, but I do think that a lot of teams, especially teams like the Lakers and the Clippers, they're not going to be focused on the regular season as much. Whereas so there's going to be nights where they're just not even giving a shit on defense. Or this might be more of a Lakers thing, but there's going to be nights where that defense just looks awful. And there's going to be nights where they're just cold, where they're incredibly cold. And because they have a lot of vets and they have LeBron, for LeBron, it's just about the playoffs. Whereas a team like Utah, they're young. They haven't really achieved anything in the postseason yet. So I can see them, playing really hard night in, night out. They have the depth, they have the personnel, and they want to make a name for themselves. So I feel like a team like Utah is, aside from having the pieces and kind of the right recipe, I think that they have the motivation to actually make a statement in the regular season. Because if you're the Lakers, you have LeBron James, and you're the Lakers, so you're always going to have a level of attention and scrutiny. But for a team like Utah, they really want to put themselves on the map to the casual fan, or not just the casual fan, but they want to put themselves on the map of just contention, right? And so that's why I could see them really really making a statement in the regular season, kind of like the Bucks did this past year.
Yeah, that's a pretty good comparison. I can totally see that. I do expect teams like the Jazz and the Nuggets
Yeah, Nuggets are
being
great.
young.
Yep.
Yeah, they're not going to take their foot off the gas. They're definitely going to take their regular season more seriously relatively than some of these other contenders that might have more veteran experienced stars.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But that's
Speaking
interesting.
speaking of the Bucks, yeah. Go no, actually, you go ahead. Go ahead.
So I was just saying it's interesting that you said that they as a one seed they're going to be 58, 59 wins. So do you think the West, like all the 8 playoff teams, it's possible they could all be 50 plus win teams? 'Cause I'm thinking
I
it's going to be
yeah.
pretty balanced.
Yeah, honestly, 59 might even be kind of high. I wouldn't be surprised if all the teams in the West won somewhere between 50 to 57 games.
Yeah, I was thinking the same. So that'll
Yeah,
be
I
pretty
mean,
cool for it to be that tight for the assuming that happens.
yeah, I mean, the Lakers in 2010 were the 1 seed, and I think they had 57 wins.
Mhm.
And that was that in that same year, the OKC was the 8 seed with 50 wins. So
Right.
back then, and I mean, that was also like 2010 was a little bit before the whole Big Three era. So you think about it, like maybe it's just we expect to have a lot of really good teams, but no one team that's just clearly, heads and shoulders above everybody else.
For sure.
Yeah. I guess I touched upon the Bucks, or I compared the Jazz, saying I could see them taking a leap like the Bucks. Speaking of the Bucks, I guess 2 questions for you. One, do you think that Giannis should be the favorite to repeat as MVP?
Hmm.
And B, is Philly the favorite, or are the Bucks the favorite, or is it someone else? Are we maybe sleeping on Toronto?
Hmm. Favorite to repeat as MVP. I mean, I feel like that just doesn't happen very often. So it's hard to really to say, and especially just given like the kind of year that the Bucks had, Giannis had, and it was just the storyline of it, him leading them to the number 1 seed, and him kind of just breaking out and showing showing all the casual fans and just everyone in general how great he is. So I think now that he has this MVP, it almost kind of he's established. So now people are
Mm-hmm.
kind of looking for that next guy, who's going to do something similar. So yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't have an MVP candidate in mind,
Same.
but yeah, it's tough to say, and I'm not so sure if the Bucks can sustain that level of success. I think they're still going to be top 3 in the East, but not so sure about 1 seed. I would probably give the nod to Philly, just
Mm-hmm.
given their moves and really just thinking about how close they were last year. I mean, they went to Game 7 with the Raptors, the eventual champion.
Kawhi bounce, man. The Kawhi
Yeah,
bounce.
yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I think I would lean towards Philly for now, but yeah, of course. I mean, Giannis is fantastic. So I'm sure he's pretty disappointed about losing in the conference final, especially being up 2-0, and it was
Mm-hmm.
looking at one point. I was actually one of the I will admit I thought the Bucks were gonna beat the Raptors handily, especially after the first 2 games. I just felt
Yeah.
like matchup wise they were causing some problems, but I mean they were playing very well, and I think they were right there. They just couldn't quite keep that level of play going, and of course the Raptors made their adjustments, and Kawhi did a great job. So yeah,
Yeah.
not so sure about Giannis though as MVP.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, I was just thinking about it today, and I was like, okay, I don't feel like the player that changes teams in the off season usually wins MVP that first
Yeah,
year is what I was thinking. So I'm like, okay, so that cancels a lot of different players out. and then I'm thinking, and then on top of that, usually with the exception of Russell Westbrook in 2017, the MVP's on like a top 2 seed in their conference. And for me, I have no idea who's going to be the top 2. Yes, I said earlier I think Utah's a top 2 seed, but like it wouldn't surprise me if they were also outside of the top 4. So it's like the West, I have no idea. So I'm just looking like, is Giannis, in my head, I'm thinking like, is Giannis the favorite just because I saw him win it this year, or does maybe the narrative flip on him, because he's won it now? So I'm kind of with you. I don't know if the Bucks can really, outdo expectations now that they've kind of put themselves on the radar. So I really do feel, like you said, it's really hard to think of who is an MVP favorite right now, especially if you kind of look down, because when you think about who's the best player right now, I think most people would have to say it's probably Kawhi, given the two-way dominance and the fact that he just he just won the chip. But at the same time, that guys like Kawhi and LeBron are going to be they're going to be hitting the snooze button on the regular season. So it's like, shit, like who really is the MVP favorite? I have no idea, and I think that's one thing that makes the regular season a little more exciting.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we'll see who's sort of next as far as like having that breakout season and leading the charge and for the long NBA season. So yeah, that'll be interesting for both the West and East, who will emerge, and as definitely it's going to be a tight race, I'm sure. And I'm sure LeBron and Kawhi, they'll still make a compelling case, even though they do hit the snooze button. But I do expect them to have great seasons. I do expect LeBron to have, I guess you can say, a bounce back season after being hurt and a disappointing finish last year. So, I can see a rejuvenated LeBron. So.
Yeah. What else was I thinking? Yeah. I also think that Milwaukee's going to not take a major setback, but I do think that they will feel. I do think they'll be impacted, at least in the regular season, by the loss of Brogdon.
Yeah, I mean he was a good piece, and they were one of those teams. I mean, Giannis is the lone superstar, so like. Really,
yeah,
it's a one of the you surround him with some integral role players, and I think Brogdon was definitely one of them. So to lose him will be a void that they have to fill.
Yeah. How do you feel about So it seems like, I think it's almost a consensus, Kevin Durant's going to sit next year. He's not going to play. So. How do you feel about a Nets team with Kyrie and a bunch of young dudes who showed some promise last season? So like, how do you feel about Kyrie being the guy and whatnot? Because, not to draw too many parallels, but I do feel like this is kind of what we walked into when he went to Boston.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah. I mean, Boston was a pretty good team when he went there. They just couldn't quite close the deal in the playoffs. I expect the Nets with him and those young guys, they'll certainly be in the playoff picture. I would say as a fifth, sixth seed. I could see that. So I won't really go any further than that. I think, this is an opportunity for Kyrie to show what he can do as a leader, because that's really been one of the narratives with him, is that he can't lead, and people go back to how he, the way things were in Cleveland before LeBron arrived, and how bad that situation was. And then, of course, Boston. I mean, Boston, they had a pretty solid team overall, but him going there, being the kind of the main superstar, and them not getting over the hump, and people, I think the fans were expecting them go to the finals at least one of the years, and they didn't.
With you, like, Kyrie, you know me, like we've had conversations in private where I've actually cited, the pre-LeBron Cleveland teams with Kyrie, and then obviously in Boston he didn't really show that he would thrive in that leadership role. But that said, the early Cleveland days, he was young, so I can give him a pass for that. Boston, it's hard to give him a pass for that, but I do think it is important to note that he chose to be a Net. He's from New Jersey and he wanted to be there, so maybe that'll change things. But I do wonder if things go a little bit sideways and Kyrie's on, he's doing the shit he was doing this past year. I do wonder if Kenny Atkinson's gonna quickly find his way onto the hot seat.
Yeah. I guess that's something to look out for this particular season before KD comes back from injury.
Yeah, not to get like too far ahead, but obviously this coming season we're not going to have Kevin Durant play, and Klay Thompson's going to miss most of the year. And a lot of these teams with new faces, new stars, might take some time to really get their groove. But just imagine so we're obviously incredibly excited for this NBA season, but just imagine how excited we're going to be for 2020 to 2021 when KD's returning and Klay's, hopefully healthy and recovered. And we've gotten a taste of these new dynamic duos. Like, damn, I can't even imagine, dude.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, what we'll be thinking after a year witnessing what's in store with these like duos, and then of course two amazing players and who are very exciting to watch, and it'll be great to see them come back, and hopefully they will come back as good as they were before injury. So yeah, that'll make it all the more interesting. The NBA is of course very exciting, and those two will only contribute more to that.
Yeah. This is unrelated, but did you know that Russ was at his own stand-up comedy show in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, when he found out he got traded?
No way, really?
It's surfacing on the internet, a video of someone in the audience telling him he got traded.
Oh my god, that's hilarious. Wow.
Damn. That is Yeah, I mean that's dude, that must be kind of crazy. Just like, obviously, him being there for so long and having a connection to that community, and then to be in Oklahoma when he finds out, like damn.
Yeah. Wow.
Damn. I will say, you know me. Obviously, the audience doesn't really know this, but like I have been in the peaks and valleys with Russell Westbrook. Like, there was a stretch where he was my favorite point guard and he was my guy, and I adamantly defended him from everybody. And at the time, this was at a time where it was pretty popular to criticize him. And then obviously, when it became the Russell Westbrook triple-double love fest, I started to go a little bit the other way, not because I didn't like him, but because I wanted to I wanted to be a little more objective and maybe play devil's advocate more to people who were, going extremely, having hot takes one direction. But I will say this: I do think that like what Russ kind of, I guess Russ was a little bit of a dying breed in that in this era of player movement, he was the one guy that actually wanted to stay when the going got tough.
Absolutely. It's like they lost their Dirk Nowitzki, like, if the Mavericks would have lost him. So I definitely feel for the fans. I think they adored him and appreciated the loyalty he showed for all those years. And so Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I can understand the disappointment.
yeah. And I mean, I mean, like I said, I've been critical of Russ a decent amount of the last few years, but I will say it is cool to see that, maybe there's only a handful of guys who he was one of the few guys that didn't he never like he had so many easy way not so many easy way outs, but like he could have requested a trade many times, and he could have but he could have tried to walk towards the exit much sooner than now. And it took until a situation where it was like, okay, the team is clearly headed one way, and I'm at a point in my career where I want to go away. So I will have to say, like, shout out to him for the 11 years that he gave Oklahoma City. Like, if you think about it, it was really just like, when you think about guys like Kobe, Dirk, Duncan, you were thinking like, who in this generation will spend their whole career with one team? The candidates were, the guys on the Warriors, so Steph, Clay, Draymond, and then Russell Westbrook, maybe Giannis. It's kind of early for Giannis,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just kind of it's definitely a little. It's gonna be really weird for me to not see him in a Thunder uniform, because obviously Russ is a very polarizing guy, and like I said, I've been with him in the lows, and I have criticized him during the highs, and and so on, however you want to put it. But what the one constant was that I could never ever have pictured him in anything but an Oklahoma City Thunder uniform, and here we are. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Now I actually saw today. I saw today the longest, the current of the active players in the NBA, the one who has been with one team his whole career for the longest is Steph.
Wow. That's crazy.
10 years with the Warriors, and I can say this about Steph because I know Steph. He's an incredibly selfless guy, and he's already won. He's already gotten basically all the accolades that so many players want. But I do hope that Steph finishes his career in the Bay Area. Like, not just finishes. I hope he never leaves.
Yeah. Same. I hope he and Clay never leave. That'll be awesome to see the
Yeah,
Splash Brothers there for their whole
yeah.
careers.
I get the sense that those two will be. I get the sense that I guess this is an interesting parallel. I could see Steph, Clay, and Draymond kind of being like the Spurs big three. Actually, I take that back because Tony Parker did play a year in Charlotte, but I guess Steph and Clay could be the Tim and Manu, and then Giannis could be like the Dirk.
Yeah.
Assuming Giannis does stick around in Dallas or Milwaukee, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Like, in this era, like we said, of so much player movement, it's like it is. I'm all for players, controlling their own destiny and doing and having the control rather than the owners. But I do think it is kind of cool to see, guys like Steph, Giannis, what we just saw with Russ, guys who really are like lifers. I guess Harden counts, but obviously he was traded there from OKC. But like, it is cool to be able to attach. Like, when I think of a certain guy, I think of a team. I do think that's cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where the whole term like face of the franchise comes from. I think like you can sort of think of that one guy when you think of the team. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's nice. It definitely takes some good fortune and of course succeeding. I mean, if OKC had gotten a championship, I'm sure we're not having this discussion today. But the fact
yeah,
is that they missed out on their window and they've accepted it and they have to move on and try to create a new window of opportunity and they have to just make the tough decision. But respect to how, sort of both sides handled it. Russell Westbrook, of course, being loyal, and the Thunder sort of honoring his request. He wanted to go play with Harden. I
hmm
think that was. I mean, there were reports about how he was interested in Miami, but it seems that the Rockets and playing with James Harden in particular was his top choice. So got to respect the front office for sort of honoring that request.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right there. We've been talking a little over an hour. I don't want to hold you up too much longer, but before we go, I want to go back to a point I said earlier when I talked about who is the next big domino to fall or change teams. I can't believe we both forgot about. I can't believe I forgot to mention this. Maybe it's because he's no longer, in his peak time, whatever you want to say, and that he was hurt last year. But honestly, I'm expecting that Kevin Love's going to be traded before training camp.
Oh yeah, he. I will admit, I forgot about him. And
I forgot about him too, dude. I feel like everyone, I say this jokingly with admiration for Kevin Love, but I always feel like he's forgotten a lot of. He's always the forgotten guy. There was the joke in Cleveland where they took a picture after a game and he wasn't in the picture.
Yeah.
So, I always feel like he's the forgotten guy. But yeah, honestly, I think Kevin Love is the next guy to via trade, obviously, because he's signed an extension last summer. But
right.
Yeah, I think Kevin Love. Now, granted, I don't think Kevin Love is a megastar, like a superstar, like he's probably not a top 15 player, but he is an all-star who can do a lot of really good, who can contribute in a lot of meaningful ways on a good team. So I think he'll be next to move because I think he and the organization in Cleveland know like the timetables just don't line up.
Yeah, I can very much see that now. Thinking about it, like that would not surprise me at all.
And I guess to end on a potentially good note, I don't know how you'll take this, but I just thought of this. I didn't write this. This literally just hit me, but Kevin Love in Dallas.
Oh, you said Kevin Love to Dallas?
Yeah, I think because what's the knock on Kevin Love? Defense. Put him next to a tall, not a tall, but like a good defense protector in Porzingis. Good spacing in Dallas, I assume. And Dallas, obviously, Cuban likes to shoot for stars. Hasn't really worked out in free agency, but maybe he can make it happen through trade.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure they will explore that option. I'm not really sure how they would, who they would send in a deal, but
yeah, that might get tough. But yeah, I mean, they didn't. If they still have some room because they didn't get Dragic in the Miami deal. So yeah, no, I don't know. That just hit me. I wouldn't sleep on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't sleep on it either. I can't think of. I mean, maybe the Spurs. I talked earlier about how they always sort of make something happen.
Yeah,
can't count them out.
Maybe Portland.
Oh yeah, that could.
Yeah, Channing Frye said that I know Channing Frye said he wanted to see Kevin Love in Portland. So maybe he knows that. Maybe he's got some inside information that Kevin Love wants to be in Portland.
Oh yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I could. Yeah, I mean. Yeah. But yeah. I guess I don't mean to hold you up too much longer. It's getting kind of late on the East Coast, so I want to thank you for taking the time to chop it up, talk some hoops per usual. And I want to thank all the listeners for listening to this episode of the SplashTag Podcast. Please subscribe, whether it's on iTunes or YouTube or SoundCloud. Soon we'll have the podcast up on Spotify. Once again, thank you for doing this, man. Really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thank you as well. This was fun as always, and good to finally talk about all the free agency moves that happened in the last 10 days. So yeah, let's we'll see what's in store. But yeah, appreciate you having me, and thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. And Sid, I'm sure I'll have you on real soon, so you guys you'll be able to catch Sid. Hopefully not too far from now. I'll have him back on the podcast. But once again, thanks for listening, and